We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke, Britton Financial Partners. Today's guest is Ben Riddle, Director at Buxton Real Estate here in Geelong. Benny, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
No worries at all. Well, mate, I don't know whether you've listened to any of our podcasts before.
I have.
You've listened to Peter and me drone on about all things Geelong and sport and football and finance, but
Pete's not as hard-hitting as he was on the field than he is on the podcast. So,
mate, this has gone straight to footy early, hasn't it? I won't repeat, Cindy, what I said just before we jumped on.
No.
But Peter's softened in his old age. That's for sure.
True.
Ben, what we like to do on the podcast is just get a bit of background for those. Obviously, you're pretty well known in the Geelong area, but for those people that by chance haven't heard about you or know who you are and your business, let's go back as far as you're happy to go back. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And ultimately, how'd you end up running the show at Buck?
well, I sort of have imposter syndrome because I'm sitting here and there's lots of people that have done really good things. So I'm happy to be here. It's my first podcast, to be really honest with you. So I'm excited. But
It's not the first time you've had a conversation, though, mate.
No, true. Balbo Still, I grew up. So very working class. Grew up with my mates. Used to knock around up at Myers Reserve, and it was cool. It was cool stuff. Rowlands Primary was the local primary school. North Geelong Secondary College. Pretty normal. Tried every sport under the sun, and that was what you lived off as a kid. Balbo Still was full of sporting kids, and we'd ride our bikes, and not ideally, but everything we used to do as kids. I mean, it's hard to sort of talk to your own kids and say this is how we lived our life. You get old, I suppose, or you feel old because this is what your parents used to talk about you. But we just lived a different life.
Someone said to me the other day that there's no bike racks at school anymore. I rode my bike.
Yeah,
I didn't get dropped off at school.
Spot on.
Yeah, no bike racks at school. Kids are getting dropped off.
Yep.
You would have spent half your day on your bike and your BMX with your tough wheels and pegs.
We rode our bikes and had to wear those stack hats, and we were terrified that if we didn't wear it, the cops would pull us up, and you lived your life in fear of police and
respect.
Yeah,
funny.
Yeah, all that. So, look, pretty normal. Tried basketball for a bit. Had a checkered career, I suppose. Was involved with the local basketball team, the Supercats, and we had a moment in '96 where we got booted out of the league. So things changed. High school finished, university.
So where did you play local? Were you at Pivot City?
Pivot City locally, and you'd play your 3 or 4 games a week. And
so who was there at that time? I think I might have read that. Was Zane Vale there at that time?
No, he was after me. I'm a bit older, but had a lot of good people, a lot of good coaches. Old Wayne Davidson, Tim O'Leary, the old basketball legends, and it was good. It was competitive. It was a good standard. And as I said, you had that pathway to go through the local leagues. We had a state league side and a lot of, Adam Lamont, Damien Armours, these sort of guys that are old basketball legends too. So it was a charmed life, really. And
so when did you pick basketball over the other sports that you chose?
We were just talking about that. I think under 11s, I'd decided that I was either going to be a very, very outside player in footy. They used to call me Hands Riddle, but so it was an early decision. And I think nowadays probably the encouragement from a parent's point of view in general is to let kids do what they want as long as they want till they work out what they want to do. And I was okay to make that decision. I love basketball, so I wasn't very good at footy or anything else. And so it was sort of chips all in on that sport. And you look back, like I wasn't good enough. I wasn't going to make it. And
you're okay though. I mean, how many?
I was okay in local standards, but I was okay.
You played a handful of NBL games.
Squeezed 5 NBL games, and then we're out the door. So and I think deep down whether you've got the drive and the desire to really do something. People can sit there and say, "Oh, the opportunity was taken from you," but I think in life's full of moments where you either create your own opportunity or you don't. And I enjoyed playing. We went back to the ABA League. I went to Mount Gambier for a couple of years, come back to Geelong, a couple of years, got injured, and I reckon I was about 25 and I just decided I'd had enough. So
when you were, say, 25, but prior to that, when you finished school, so backtracking a little bit, you do a commerce business degree.
It took me 4 years to do a 3-year uni degree. Yeah, so
join the club,
yeah,
mate.
Yeah, fumbled my way through a Bachelor of Commerce and ticked that box. And look, I was interstate sort of doing it off campus too. So it took me a little bit longer than most. But
were you working at this time, or was basketball?
Gone to Mount Gambier and was just working in the basketball stadium. I was 19, first job out of school. I can remember going home for a sleep on the first day of work in my lunch break. I went home and had a sleep for 45 minutes. I was knackered, absolutely knackered. So I can remember being away for a month and ringing mum and saying, it's just quiet, it's a small town, I don't like it. And then fast forwarded 4 weeks later, it was fantastic. And, it was probably my leaving of home moment and sort of growing up a little bit. So, yeah, the things you sort of remember, I'm 46 now, but you remember those things and what they meant to you. But it was a great experience, went away. You could parlay this into local footballers travelling town to town playing footy every year till they're 35 and old and bruised and busted up. But it was a great experience. Come back to Geelong. I got to play with my best mates. They're still my best mates. The best thing we remember about, playing in the early 2000s was all of those people I played with we still catch up. We're on a text the other night watching the Boomers, and Damien Armour's now on Basketball Australia's board in Japan, watching Warwick Giddy's kid just absolutely towel him up. So that environment for me has probably impacted me more to get into business. So that sporting, that camaraderie, that team environment, that collaboration, you don't realise at the time, you just do it because you love it. But again, these are all the things that you pick up in life and that sort of build you into the person you are. So.
Sport's a great representation of life in so many ways, isn't it?
Amazing.
The tough, the great, and all the in-between. And if you take all those lessons,
yeah, absolutely,
and take them into the area you pursue,
yep,
it's some really, really good learnings that you can add value in your business life.
And my 10-year-old now is doing gymnastics, and that's a 25-hour week where it's a highly individual sport, but you watch those kids and it's about the friendships and the stuff, and it's highly individual. There's a team aspect to it, but the truth is it's what you put into it, it's what you get out of it, and it's all about you. So, it's good that even in that type of sport, her understanding the values about, again, whatever it is, collaboration, friendship, all those sort of things are important. So.
Geelong is I suppose it's not unique, but we're biased because we exist in the Geelong community. But there's not very many degrees of separation when you start to talk about people with their local clubs, whether it be basketball or football. The connections and the interconnectedness between that and business and people and relationships. I mean, I know that you talk about this a lot, PB. That those, and as you have then, Ben, that those relationships and principles that you develop in the sporting environment and in the sporting clubs, they have held the likes of the two of you in great stead when it comes to running and operating and owning your own business.
It's just the relationships you build through your sporting connections. And you moved away from Geelong to a country town for a period of time, and I think getting out of the comfort zone of being in here where it was easy, you knew everyone, you knew everything that was going on in the place.
Yeah.
You get out of your comfort zone and suddenly you learn a lot more about yourself. But then the best way to know people when you move to a new place is to get into a sporting club.
Yeah.
The best way to get into the community is get into the sporting club, and all of a sudden you've got multiple friends and multiple family relationships. And if you take that through then into whatever you choose to do in your work life, in your business life, and you know what it's like. I hark back to, knowing that you played, junior footy at Bell Park with Greg Riddle, who's one of the best mates of a lot of my best mates. Just that link between people. And as you said before, you come back and have a run around in the twos when Andrew Mapleson was coaching in about 2000. Well, that link is, we have, Geelong's a big town.
Yeah.
It's the whole Geelong and Ballerine, 500,000 or thereabouts, but it's big enough to be anonymous if you choose, but gee whiz, everyone knows everyone. Like there's somewhere, and it's not 6 degrees of separation now, it's 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Which is lovely.
And I think the opportunity that we've got in Geelong, like we're blessed that it's big enough that you can do what you want. Like, unfortunately people move away from where they grew up because it doesn't have the options that are available. So, going back to that basketball space, I loved it for everything it was. I knew deep down I probably wasn't good enough, but I also understood that, I saw players working harder than I did. We had a guy, Matty Alexander, who played in the Supercats in the 90s, and, he was what you call a journeyman. He must have played, I think, at 5 different NBL clubs, and he would work out 3 times a day. You just come into the stadium, and here I am
having a sleep at lunchtime.
Yeah, here I am going to faster pasta in the main street of Mount Gambier and going home for a nap. And like the truth, it's like anything. I think the lessons I learned in basketball, though, I was able to apply very quickly into real estate. And I didn't choose real estate. It was interesting. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Doing a commerce degree, you don't always have a plan. So for me, it wasn't that. I fell into real estate. It was an old real estate agent, Michael Lowe. I grew up with his family. It was a basketball family, and he gave me an opportunity to sell houses. And
was this immediately when you came back from Mount Gambier?
It was, yeah. So I was playing locally, and we didn't get paid. So people find this fascinating, but we didn't get paid as basketballers. We were playing second division outside. It was a league under the NBL. And I remember Tex Keeley ringing me and having a go at Jared and I because we'd gone in and played a twos game in the GFL, and it was against our contract. And the contract said, here's how you have to behave, but there's no money in it. So it was sort of one of those conversations. It was a little bit robust around we can do what we like, but there wasn't any money in a basketball. In retrospect and relative terms now, there probably still isn't. Basketball's probably never been better, but it's gone through cycles where, playing and training 3 times a week, playing interstate on a weekend and playing 2 or 3 games, you can't survive off that.
You didn't do that for financial rewards.
No, you didn't.
No
you
way.
Didn't. And the good thing is the things I remember about that, you don't remember the money or what you didn't get paid. You just remember the mateship and the moments and winning and what that looked like. And it gives you far much more than the money you can spend. And, so, I wouldn't give that up or change it for anything. But as I said, the writing on the wall mid-20s for me was really clear around I want to do something. And the truth is I wanted to make money. It was a combination of not having much. My parents gave me everything they could, so I lived a rich life. But the truth was I used to say I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 25. And
took you till you were 26.
I don't know. I can't remember. I remember my pa helped me out with a deposit on my first block of land, which, sometimes you just need a leg up. So I was going through uni. I'd done a comedy show at the Arena. I remember putting on a comedy...
you did a stand-up?
Yeah, I stood up.
Okay,
I wasn't very funny, but put on a show just to get myself through uni and, sold 800 tickets and I sold, door-to-door $300 corporate boxes and I still didn't know what I wanted to do and then the real estate knock come. So I remember spending the first 3 or 4 years in real estate just selling houses but not really connecting with this is my path.
So how old were you when you got that opportunity?
25. Okay. So real job, 24, Little Mallup Street. It was the phone book, a phone, and it was...
Sorry, what was the agency?
Ray White,
yep.
Geelong, and it was start ringing people. And that was it. There was no email. Internet wasn't born. Internet may have been born. There was no portals as far as advertising your house.
There's no iPhones.
It was put people in the back of your car. It was, ring people, and that was it. The Addy used to turn up on the Monday and they'd have the pages that you'd advertise for the week and you had to mark up the mistakes with pen. It was exciting. But again, the connection for me was just I'm in a job looking for what I want to do with my life versus this is what I want to do. And we'll circle back to this, but I think the evolution of anybody running a business or at least achieving is that connection with I'll do whatever it takes to get to where I need to go. And the truth is I didn't have that for basketball. I'm okay saying that, but I wish I did. I wish I look back and say I should have or I would have done that. I should have trained harder. I should have done those things. But the truth was you just need to have that inner burn to really want to achieve in something. And I think, peak performance, you talk about peak performance in any type of field. Peak performance is not about feeling great every day you wake up and saying, I'm going to get my stuff done. You got to get your shit done. Peak performance is about waking up saying, I need to get my shit done and I feel terrible, but I'll get it done.
Yeah.
And the difference in our business in sales is, and it's the same as you guys, like people make the calls or they don't. They do the work or they don't. And there's lots of places you can hide. But the truth is the ability to perform at any high level comes from the understanding I'm not going to feel great about it all the time, but I know what I need to do and I'll do it.
So that's a really interesting concept, which as a philosophy, it's so easy to do things when things are easy. But the biggest challenge for all of us is when you wake up feeling like shit. But you just got to get up and do it, whether it be exercise or go to work and actually put the smile on your face and get cracking. Mm. And that's the stuff that actually makes a difference. If you can do that even when you're not wanting to, when it's not easy to do, that's when you can suddenly find you get above the bar that everyone else is getting to and you've got a chance to be successful.
Absolutely. And we talk about 1%ers and 99%. Like if you want to live a 1% life, then you're going to have to do things that 99% of people won't do.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we live in an age now where there's a higher awareness about mental health. There's spaces where the old days of just doing it Well, we don't live in a black and white world as much as we do. So
Tons and tons of grey.
So you've got lots of grey, and it's, how far do you push somebody? How far do they push themselves? We're talking about 4-day work weeks. We're talking about all these things that it's hard for me as a 46-year-old. I'm stuck in this space of, okay, well, are we making excuses as a society for non-performance? Like, it's a really grey area. I'm not here to advocate for anything, but clearly mental health is a massive, massive thing in our community. But do people have the ability to be
resilient?
Can they get up? Can they push? Can they do that? And not to the detriment of your health, but there's a really grey space in between, and that people that can achieve and do well, that get the rewards, are the people that can somehow find a way to push through that. And
people like yourself, I mean, you're both a business owner with lots of employees and a dad, and I think, and also involved in sporting situations where young people are, looking to you for guidance and mentorship in lots of different ways. I think if you can have that capacity to look at both sides of it, like I used to say to Jay, for goodness sake, toughen up, mate. Like, that was the way it was. Yep. But also, if you can be sensitive,
what he really said.
but if you can be sensitive to the fact that there are times when people really need a cuddle and they really need to be helped through stuff, but also helping them to develop resilience when it isn't life changing. It's a sore toenail. Like, it's not that big a deal. But hang on, it's a broken leg. Like, being able to identify that, but with all the young people around you, your own kids, the people you work with. And in sporting organisations, that, I think, the maturity of having lived through life, you've done lots of things, allows you to look at that, and hopefully we're sensitive to the stuff when we need to be really caring and sensitive. Yeah. But also there are times when you can say, hang on, don't let that bog you down. That's not that big a deal. Let's get up and go. Yeah. Like, it's a challenge is to get them off the floor quickly, let them fall over and throw a bit of a tantrum for 10 seconds, but that'll do. Get up now and let's go. We're all allowed to feel shit.
I think articulating the difference between IQ and EQ is a big thing. IQ in leadership is, I'm the smartest person in the room, do as I do, I'll lead, but understanding people and understanding what makes them tick. And I think having people in a space where they can communicate, hey, I've got issues, I can't do that, is far more effective. So I think everybody's got their own leadership style, but the truth is, if people don't feel valued, important and empowered, then they're not going to perform anyway. So it's probably trying to get the right balance. And it's still a challenge. Like, it's still a challenge between people that don't want to do the work and people that do want to do the work that have got a barrier that you need to understand and help them through. So mid-20s, phone, and it was just ring people you knew. And that's how business started. It still starts that way. It's like...
Ring all your friends.
Correct.
Ring every cousin you've got.
Send them a business card. I'm in real estate. Can I help you? And important words like help. We talk about business. Like, you're in a service industry. You're here to help. Please, thank you. Those were the key words I remembered. Thank people and say please and be polite and, be a nice person. I mean...
That would have been a battle for you, mate.
Yeah, being a nice person. Yeah. It's funny, like, we have a philosophy, we recruit, I guess it's a bit cliched, but, you can teach people skills, but you can't teach them to be good human beings.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of our recruitment is about fundamentally understanding what type of person you're working with, and we've had all types. It's no different than any other business. Some people show themselves longer. It takes a while, but for us, it's not much more than that. If you're a good human being, we think we can work with you. If you have the passion and the drive and you want to achieve, well, that's great. But again, that everything we talk about in business is the same as sport. It's exactly the same, I think.
So what does 46-year-old Ben say to 25-year-old Ben if you sneak back in time and give him a couple of tips?
Good question. Take more risks. Actually grow quicker. You don't know what you know till you know it. So you look back and say, I've made a gazillion mistakes and I do this different. But the truth is, coming from a very conservative family as far as lifestyle and that sort of thing, I'd probably take more risks. All my family were teachers, my uncle's Christian college, my Uncle Butch, all that sort of stuff. I was the black sheep, so I was in business and I was there to make money. And it wasn't as callous as that. I needed a platform to do well financially. That was the drive. That was the initial drive, and it changes, by the way. But for me, it was an opportunity, and I remember sitting in real estate for 2 or 3 years doing a good job at being a salesperson, not understanding, and I hadn't connected with, if I accept my reality, I could make a go of this. It was more, I was looking for something else. I was looking for racehorse ownership. I was looking for, whatever it was. It was what else can I do with my life, because this is a job and I'm going okay, but I didn't have a passion for it. I didn't have the drive to say, where can it get me? And I didn't see that. It probably wasn't until I left Ray White as a salesperson and worked as a business development officer at Ray White in Melbourne, so in Collins Street. And I worked for the White family. And Brian White had a significant influence in a really short space of time. I was only there for 2 years, but Brian used words like value. Brian used to talk about value all the time. It's not about the price you pay for something, it's the value you get. And he was really big on that connection with people and what value can they provide you, but what value can you reciprocate. So for me, that was really important. And I remember working hard to try and get Ray White to buy a brand called Buxton in Melbourne. And the conversation had started that Buxton were 150 years old and they were a slow-moving, slow-growing brand, highly respected and dominant in their areas. But, they were a small network. And for us, the opportunity was for Ray White couldn't, and we can talk about brands and where they fit, but in Melbourne's a very parochial real estate brand. It's totally different to anywhere else in Australia. If you go to Queensland, you go to New South Wales, you go to Perth, it's dominated by Ray White, Rain and Horn, Remax, LJ Hooker. Very much franchised. You go to Melbourne and it's Marshall White, Jallis Craig, Kane Burton, small networks, prestigious, very parochial, and Ray White couldn't grow in the suburbs. They couldn't grow into Brighton. They couldn't get into Toorak. They couldn't get into South Yarra. They couldn't get into Richmond. They couldn't get into those areas. And so the opportunity was there. And it wasn't until I saw that opportunity, probably for myself, to be honest, around, well, I still live in Geelong. I'm still driving. I don't think the traffic's going to get any better in the next 15 years. And
I need to change something.
That's one thing I got right. So for me, it was that opportunity around, well, what if we could do something different in Geelong? And I was working for Ray White. We'd put in 6 Ray White offices in Geelong. So, fast forward 2006, 6 Ray White offices lived in Geelong. I was actually going to go back and work in a Ray White office, and the opportunity was, well, does Buxton fit in Geelong? What does that look like? And, right underneath you guys right now, I opened the first office. You remember, I think I was 78 kilos then and only had one chin. And, we fired up with Buxton in Geelong, and that was the first office. And I remember one of my competitors saying that I'd opened up in a hairdressing salon. Yeah. It was just that little shop and the knives were out. But
you told me a story when we had lunch a week or so ago that you used to have your laptop on the microwave because there's no room. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. If you look at the best parts of your business, it was growing. I remember sitting on reception, waiting for the license. I was trying to recruit a salesperson, and the start of the journey was we had Naomi come from Hocking Stewart. I had 2 sales guys ready to go, and we actually, for some reason, had the Hocking Stewart sandwich board that didn't exist, and we just rebranded it Buxton. So, I can remember doing that office. It was $40,000. I had a mortgage. I had a home. I budgeted to make no money for 12 months. I think I paid myself $15,000 for the year, and it was bloody exciting. Like for anybody who started at the start, that journey, you remember, and it was, you wore all hats. You were happy to do the phone. You were happy to put your own bins out. You were happy to, and we still do. I empty my bin every 3 days. It's just that nature of, I think our style is we don't see ourselves any better, any worse than anyone else in the business. It's a flat line as far as your role. We try not to have a hierarchy. It's pretty much, I'll do anything that I'll make my PA do. We do some of the work, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was exciting. It was hard. It was fantastic. There was an ego to it. So you had your own business, you had your own shingle, and anyone that says that doesn't exist is lying. But I was sort of ready for it. And it was then where I accepted the fact that this is what I'm doing for the next 15 years.
I think feeling proud of the fact that you're taking a risk, that you're putting yourself on the edge a bit, and having a crack to make it successful. I mean, you've got every right to, and I think, like the aggressive over-the-top ego is one thing, but the ego saying, well, I look in the mirror, I'm really proud of what I'm doing, I'm really happy with who I am, and I reckon I can make this work, and if it falls over once or twice out of every 10 attempts, that's a sporting cliche again, like if you take 10 risks and 7 of them work, you win the game. Yeah. And that's in business too, like we look back over our life here. And there's lots of things that were fairly significant mistakes, both employing people and business decisions, but they help you learn and grow. And what are the mistakes of the currency of knowledge?
Yeah. Can you think of some of the bigger mistakes you made that you learnt the most from?
I think hiring people really quickly is probably the biggest thing.
And then not firing quickly?
Yeah. Look, possibly. We don't. I remember COVID, probably the proudest thing we had was really early COVID, and everyone would remember this, and we did. So I won't sit there and say we didn't lose anybody. We were terrific. You know, I remember absolutely shitting myself 6 weeks in, and my wife kept on. I turned up. It was almost like the full Monty. I was turning up to work in a suit. My wife's like, "Geez, it must be busy out there." You know, and I'm running a footy tipping comp and a racing comp for about 300 blokes across Geelong on a Saturday. Like there wasn't a lot going on the first 6 weeks, and I was thinking, I think we had five businesses at the time. I'm thinking we're going to lose a lot. We don't know what's going to happen here, and we can get onto government and stuff. But at the time, they did what they could. They were quick. They did the JobKeeper program. But I remember we had to stand down 4 people. We stood down 4 people within 2 months. And what I'm not proudest of is that we only had the information we could to make a decision at the time, and that's what we had. But all those people are still with us now. And so, look, partly government, hey, you helped out, all that sort of stuff. But moving forward, I don't regret not getting rid of people. One person I do, but in saying that, we give people a really long chance to turn it around or make it work. And I think we've been rewarded more times in our business. We've got 85 staff now, more times in our business by giving people time as long as they're doing the right things and showing you the right stuff. That's one of the things I'm more proud about. But you're right, there's some times where you gut and you just got to make a call. But in the past, we've hired really quickly, and sometimes that doesn't work either. Sometimes you need to spend a lot more time. What are they doing on social media? What does that look like?
I was going to ask, it's a little bit granular, but when your hiring process now, what are the things that you do to make sure that hiring process is a little bit more thorough?
Yeah, multiple people interviewing the person, definitely. So what looks good for me may not look good for PB. And then we want to talk about that. So having multiple people take the interview, because at least if you get some sort of consensus, I think that carries more weight. And people are looking for different things too. So more searching. So, you know, what are people posting? What does that look like? What sort of space are they in?
Do you do any sort of personality profiling or not?
We did it briefly, and I think it's got merit, but it can put people in boxes pretty quickly.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't know what you know. Like, I've made calls on people that I think would be great in real estate, and it hasn't anything to do with my ability to pick someone really good. Like Tony Morford's probably the best performer in Geelong in the last 5 years. Tony was front of house at Fisherman's Pier. You know, he was in hospitality. And I remember running to a basketball function. I said, mate, you'd be fantastic at real estate. And he'd done the hard yards. He was on his feet 12 hours a day. You know, real estate was a piece of cake to Tony. And look, he wrote over $2 million in gross commission. Like, that doesn't exist in Melbourne, let alone in Geelong. Just a fabulous performer, 160 sales a year. The average salesperson in the average salesperson in Australia does 22 sales a year. Tony does 160. Like, that's a great performer in our backyard. He was top 5 in Victoria. So I'll claim that one because I said, hey, I reckon you'd be great in real estate. But equally, the most talented people with the best amount of skill and personality doesn't always equate to, are you prepared to do the work? Mm. Now, unfortunately, Tony's having a rough patch. You know, his daughter's over in America getting treatment, which is sad. But the truth is, Tony's the hardest worker I've come across too. You know, Tony's out till 7 o'clock at night. He's doing appointments, and he's doing the work that the 1% do, that the 99% say, I'm home by 5 o'clock.
There was a point you made before, Ben, about like not recruiting for obvious skills and technical capabilities and, you know, degrees on a bit of paper, but the quality of the person, their work ethic, their ability to fit into a culture, their ability to hold a conversation and actually care about people and understand and listen, you know, those sorts of things are critical. And you can then add all the other layers of technical capabilities. There's a really good example of that.
Yeah,
someone who just knows how to work hard.
It's that high for will. You know, you can train for skill. So it's, again, cliched, but Tony's a really good example of that where, and, you know, come back to your point, Jay, like, what's the most rewarding thing is seeing people change their life, like, financially. So, you know, Tony's story is Grovedale, you know, not dissimilar to Bellpost Hill, you know, working class, parents did everything you could and you got what you got, and then it was off into the world. And so someone for Tony, like, the ability to create your own narrative a little bit about choices. It's not about the holiday house of the cars. And I know our industry was seen really poorly. We've spoken about this. Yep. You know, I'm highly aware that our industry has got a really, really bad rap, and rightly so. Like, I'm not going to defend it. I reckon our industry, more often than not, is a shit show. But the truth is, the rewards are in any industry if you're going to work hard. You know, you can have every tool and every conversation under the sun and have all the stuff, but if you're not prepared to do the work, you're going to get found out. And that's the same in anything.
But equally, mate, if you start off with the only objective to make the biggest buck you can as quick as you can, and you remove all the ethics and the people caring stuff, well, you pretty quickly get found out. Like, you only are sustainable in the real estate industry because you differentiate from those that have been cowboys. And that's what, the key thing is. Lovely, you end up making $1, which is really, really nice. But if you don't do it the right way with the right intent and the right care factor, you fall out. The world sees you very quickly. Like, you might last for 3 or 4 years, but very quickly they realise that you're just a charlatan. All you're after is, trying to scam people. It doesn't work. Yeah. So
I think
differentiate.
The challenge for salespeople in general was to make a shift between transactional to relationship, and it's the same in any business. So your customer is your customer. We spoke about, as an industry, the only customer we used to value was the seller, right? Because they were the one that paid the commission. But understanding that everybody you touch in the market is a potential customer, whether they're a tenant. Tenants get treated poorly, poor service. So shifting our narrative around what is the tenant experience like, because they then become buyers and sellers, and they'll remember the experience you give them. So not for Buxton, we focus on it, but as an industry in whole, we treat one part of the market as the most important part, and it's fundamentally wrong. Yeah. So, landlords, tenants, buyers and sellers should all be treated with the same respect, the same courtesy. And if you looked at the whole market and said everybody who I deal with is a customer, the challenge with real estate, it's always been a catch and kill mentality. So you only deal with a customer once every 8 years, which is, I'll sell a house, I don't speak to them again for 9 years, and then hopefully in 9 years they ring me when they need to sell another home. But the shift for our industry is to start valuing data. We spoke about data, and that data in that everybody's a customer and that you're here to assist and help, and there'll be lots of things you do that you don't get paid for. But the truth is, you just said it before, the money turns up. If you have that mindset that I'm going to get to as many contests and help as many people as I can, at some point you'll get paid. But people do see it. They're not stupid, and we call it commission breath. But when people know you're just in it for a commission, they see you a mile away.
Yeah. I mean, from a relationship point of view, we grapple culturally with a dozen of us here at Burke, Britton, with 50 people across 5 shops now. How do you make sure that that culture that obviously is ingrained in you is embedded in 50 staff? Like, how have you managed that from a bit? Because you're still client facing, you're still wearing the hat as a business owner and manager, and you're a people manager, and you're a dad. How do you manage all of that?
It's a good question. I think as you get older, you get better with your time. And again, I had a conversation with a good mate who plays footy, and he was talking about, is he a better footballer as a dad? And the answer was no, because he hasn't got as much time to dedicate to his craft. Highly skilled, how much time do you work on that sort of stuff? Real estate's a bit different. I think becoming a parent or a dad, you probably just become a better human being. I think you start to develop different skills. When you don't have kids, you're the most important person in the world. All of a sudden, when you have a child, you're not. you soon work out where you are in the pecking order. So I think in our industry, being a parent allows you to develop a different part of yourself, which I think is really good. Empathy, those sort of things, listening, having to listen more. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Well, maybe they should be used in the right context. So for us, I think being a parent, you just become probably better at your job, although you become more time poor, no question. So it's interesting. In real estate, you could go and work at 80 hours a week and make all the calls in the world, but dedicating 50 really good hours to your week and spending time with your family and friends, does that make you more effective? The answer is probably yes. So in a context of a footballer, I haven't got as much time to develop my skill level, which is probably my number one ingredient in a high-performance sporting environment. I'm not a good player because I've got kids and I need to spend more time away from my business, but for me, it's actually quite different. Doesn't make me a great dad. I'm trying. I mean, we all try.
Constantly.
Yeah, we're always looking at ourselves saying, should I have said that? Should I have done that? I suppose if you're not doing that, then you're not looking to improve either. But it's a tough industry for marriages and kids, real estate. The client journey has been the best thing that happened to save marriages in real estate. I would have to say that the stat for divorces in real estate 10, 15 years ago was far higher, because every piece of work that was done through a phone, and it was done at 9 o'clock. I look back when I was young, going to a birthday party, a family birthday party, and being out on the porch doing a deal. You look back and think, a little bit of cringe in that. But that was what you did. It was an industry where there's a deal to be done. You got to do it. You can't just park it and say, listen, I'll
24/7.
It is. I'll pick it up Monday. Just hold off on your offer. You didn't have the luxury of that. So I look at my behaviour and think, would I have done things different? Well, it was only what we had available. The client journey's changed so much. So real estate fundamentally is the same industry. I would assume that your industry is quite similar to what it was 50 years ago, truthfully. Although the things around it have changed, how you communicate with your customers, how you interrelate. Real estate, the customer for us, it's actually quite shameful because most people don't want to deal with us. That's the difference. So we've created our own narrative in our industry where we're probably seen as arrogant. We wear nice suits. We drive great cars. We're probably hated in a lot of spaces. And all we do is chest beat on social media about how many houses we sell. And I look at that and say, fair game.
If that sums it up, it's a fair criticism.
Absolutely. And I would think that that's the majority of the consumer out there that think we're not nice. We're in it for a deal. We're in it for a commission. And so the client journey's changed. Our client journey is, if you're a buyer, you do not want to speak to us until you have to. And it's quite sad, but it's also about how consumers engage nowadays. Everything's online. So while my marriage is really good is because I actually see my wife a lot more. But the truth is the customer doesn't want to ring me. They don't want to speak on the phone. They want to email. They want to see the photos. They want to see the floor plan. If they don't see the floor plan, they crack it. They'll Google it. They'll Google what the client paid for the property. They'll find out what a legal extension they put on the back. They'll find out everything they need to know about the home. They'll email us for a contract before they even view the property. They'll turn up to the open house. They don't want to give us their name and number, and they want to go through the home and be left alone. And if they want to buy it, they'll then engage us. That is the customer journey. It's amazing how many real estate companies still hide things like price, hide address, hide information that people desperately want. So I think as an industry, it's a little bit sad that the customers don't want to deal with us. But in saying that, I don't think we've done anything great over the last 10 years as an industry in whole to make that experience any better. And that's our reality.
I was going to say that when you said about the differences between our industry was, I think, very similar decade ago. I mean, relationship-wise, the good financial advisors have always had that focus around relationships, but the industry broadly was very transactional. And the move or the shift, which I think, without pumping PB's tires up too much, was that recognition that we needed to have an ongoing relationship with people so that they would trust us. And also we needed to make sure that we showed them the value of having connections with other professionals, like-minded professionals like yourself. And that, for us, has been probably the big change. Yes, we like to be that central source of the truth for our clients, the gatekeeper for all things of a financial nature, but we know that clients value an ongoing relationship, and they also value the fact that we've got a relationship with Ben or Harwood Andrews or an accountant that can actually that can actually build together a picture for the client that's actually going to put them in a better place. So I think, having spoken to a number of solicitors as well, they are of the same mind that they're actually trying to really push towards that relationship-focused business. It's much less transactional. Yep. And again, I think that you are definitely on the path, mate. Relationships is what I think about when I think about you. So I think it's no doubt.
I can give you a bit of a pump up, or one of your team a bit of a pump up. You mentioned before about trying to make sure that the one section of your business, which is the tenant, wasn't treated so poorly. Well, at the moment, Esther and I, we're tenants. And Susie Gadasic, who runs your rentals over at Highton, when you put her on to me, she's been absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be more happy with the work she's done for us. And that, I think, is a really good part of it, that relationship. And it wasn't about us just finding a rental and paying a bit every week for the rental. It was about her being terrific about, we're overseas and she's sending us little videos so we can have a walk through a place from the other side of the world. Like, that relationship and that care is fantastic. And we're only renting a place for 12 months. So.
I think the evolution of our business was the bit behind it. And for the listeners, it's, real estate, everybody used to wonder why we put the big ads in the paper. And the truth is, there used to be a media war in real estate. So even talking about Melbourne with The Age, back in the rivers of gold with Fairfax, and there's a totally different war for us now. It's a data war. It's about getting the customer and being able to build a relationship and add value to that so that when the time comes for them to transact, with top of mind. So we still get it. We still get people ring up and say, stop putting shit in my mailbox, the letter drop, and it's such a low a low touch point, hopefully someone might be selling, 5% of the market's buying or selling. We might give them a call. But the truth is the work's done now around adding value to people, sending them information that's valuable. No one wants to hear the agent on the weekend that sold 13 houses. Like, doctors don't get on LinkedIn and talk about how many lives they sold for the week. Like, as an industry, we just need to understand how we're perceived. And I think the challenge for us is to look at all people and see that there's a potential customer here, and that if we can help that person, we may not get paid for it today. That's the long game. And the industry needs to see that. So, again, we're evolving from a catch and kill mentality of put all the time and energy into the pitch, the American pitch, and if we don't get it, we'll see you in 10 years and hopefully you call us again, versus we may not do business now, but let's keep the relationship going. What can I send you? What's the information that you want? The interesting thing about UBP, PB, is that the shift for tenant is when you got into one of our properties, we would have connected all your utilities for you. So the value for us as a business is looking at also the customer saying, it's not about how much we can sell you, it's actually how we can help you monetize it. So from a business point of view, the challenge of making your business. So COVID taught us that if you're going to live and die by something like that, like your business is on a knife edge, that something could just snuff you out. So for us, it's not relying on the commission anymore. It's actually relying on 3 or 4 or 5 streams of income and actually adapting your business to what customers want. So the ability for you to nominate the gas, electricity, Foxtel and broadband or whatever else you want to call it, we obviously receive payment for that. We helped you. You see it as service.
Fantastic.
But we've monetized the relationship. So I think the evolution of real estate will be people should be selling more mortgages than houses. We talked about this cross-selling, but I think for any business, that doesn't matter what space you're in, it's the ability to also nurture a customer and potentially help them with more services. We should be doing insurance. We should be doing all these things. We should be offering that complete service to a customer who says, I can get everything here, not just the purchase, not just my property management, but, you look after my customer, which is my tenant. It's the same pitch with you sell a house. I want to look after your customers, your buyers. I want to help them hopefully pay you too much. But the truth is, it's getting back to those words that are important. Help, thank you, please, just those simple things. So with us, 6 offices, the challenge is always to standardise what's best about your business. And franchise is probably a dirty word nowadays, but, I don't go to McDonald's in Ballarat and get the Big Mac with a pineapple. Temptation for us is that people always think they know best and that I've got a magic bullet and I do things better. The challenge for us is, do you get the same experience going through an open house in Highton as you do in Newtown or in Herne Hill? These are the things that challenge us as a group. We train together, we behave together, we do awards together, we work as one business across multiple locations, but standardising people in a performance industry is really hard. What's the conversation that's happening at a dining table? Is it similar to somebody else's conversation? Everybody's got different abilities. Everybody is either new to the industry, old to the industry, you know what you know. So a challenge for our business will be to try and take the best of what we do and replicate it and standardise as much as we can. But it's really hard in a sport where it's individual. And we've got great listing performers that have a conversation and do the Buxton way at a presentation. But is it the same as the 25-year-old that's been in real estate 6 months who's also trying to list a home in Leopold or somewhere else? So that'll be hard. But that's sort of the evolution of where we're at.
But the challenge with that is there's some of that stuff that's out of your control. I mean, people's personality, how they learn, how quickly they learn, how they listen to what you want them to do. But you can control the messages you're providing to your team broadly. You can control the way you try to script the process and what you're going to do and how you're going to go about it.
Yep.
And you might, you'll never get it 100% right. But if you can get 80, 75 or 80% consistent behaviour across the board,
yep,
then that will be enough to say, well, when I come in to look at a house, I walk through the same way, I get the same conversations, and everyone will have their different flavour, their different personalities. Yeah. But, the more you can control what you can control, there's some of that stuff is way out of your control. Yeah. But the more standardised you can make it, the more consistent the experience, the more confident you are that the people that you're working with you are doing what you need them to do for the customer that you're looking after.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that comes back to your leadership. That comes back to, the stuff that you walk past is what you accept. Everybody's going to make mistakes. It's about that intent. And we talk about that all the time. Like, you'll make mistakes. It's fine. Everybody does. It's the intention and what's behind the mistake. Are you trying to do the right thing? And we're big on that too. So, look, it's that sort of standards we're always trying to raise. I mean, it keeps you up at night. Because as long as you're in the business and you're one of the directors or you're pushing, if it doesn't keep you up at night, you've probably had your time. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. At some point we all get tapped, and as long as you're unsettled and, I just look at it and say we've got so much work to do, so many things to do, and it's never ending. And part of it, getting back to that start, I'm in a job, I get paid to sell houses versus it's my show now and what do you stand for? Again, without getting too cliched, you only understand the cliches when you actually understand them and they sort of fit. But that journey versus the destination, like everybody's got a number. When you're trying to build wealth, it's like, I want to get to a certain point. You've got goals. But when you get to the point, what does it mean? It doesn't actually mean a lot. You work out it's all the other stuff. It's people living their dream and you helping someone else to achieve something that sticks with you a lot longer than the money. So I think for me, it's just understanding that you've got to take your moments as you go, that as much as you're an unfinished product and that you've still got this journey, it's actually appreciating your moments and saying, hey, let's go and celebrate this because it was actually really cool. We haven't got to the end yet, but I don't know if we'll ever get to the end, do we?
Well, if you get to the end, that's the time you step away. Because if you think you're at the end, well, then you're not seeking improvement, are you? You're not trying to improve. So stop.
And I think that's the pretty cool thing about it. Like, it's just probably a never-ending process. And, you learn your lessons. I've got to spend more time at home with the kids. And, okay, so now I've got that in the diary and I'm doing basketball at 4:30 on a Tuesday. It's okay to say no to somebody. Hey, can I pick this up at 6 o'clock when I get home? So, learning all those things that you do with kids has been a challenging thing, but I'd like to think I'm better for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask other people on that.
By the time you get to a point where it's too late to change it anyway.
Yeah, true.
Mate, we've talked a lot about managing the challenges of people, including our kids. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges of the market. We talked just before off air. Obviously, we talked about the impact of COVID and, the challenges that presented. Maybe talk to the market as you see it and the challenges that are presented to us right now. We won't hold you to this. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, so you don't know exactly what's going on. But instinctively, what are you seeing in the market? What do you think the next 12 months holds?
It's interesting because if you listen to economists, I don't think most of them have got it right for a long time. It's probably the only place you can get it wrong and keep your job. But equally, I don't think anybody expected what happened in COVID. I mean, COVID was two halves. People put COVID as one conversation. The first 12 months of COVID, the market was dead even. Like, it was flat, sideways. And the second year was like 20-something% in Geelong. Like, remember that space. Our role was facilitator as selling agents. We facilitated deals. I don't think I ever negotiated a deal. We got price wrong all the time. You tell the owner it's worth $1, they want $1.10, we were getting $1.30. It was just nuts. We were selling to people $100,000 over to someone that never saw the property because they just wanted to escape Melbourne and get away from Dan Andrews and come to Geelong. So that second year of COVID just put massive, lack of stock, heaps of buyers, and now it's changed. So it's almost the opposite. And I feel like, without being an alarmist, I don't feel like the pain's here yet. I got it wrong last year. I thought the pain would have arrived quite quickly as interest rates went up. But what we do know is that people are quite resilient. People find a way. They batten down the hatches. They stop buying their $7 cup of coffee. They do what they can. They give up on the holiday. But I feel like the pain in the next 12 months will be the people that say, I can't hold on any longer. And what that looks like for our industry will be the release of investment properties to the market, which will create huge supply. And the fact that the environment isn't great for buying houses. Like, if you want to invest, do I want to borrow at 7.5% to get a 5% yield, which actually costs me 2.5% a year, plus all the costs that the government are loading on and the costs that are already here, and also have the property not go up in value, potentially actually drop in value? So from an investor point of view, if you can see the long game, great opportunities. But for the common person that's using an investment to fund their lifestyle, it's not a really good environment for that. First home buyers have been smashed, borrowing at 2%, now borrowing at 7.5%. I've now moved my search 4 suburbs. So I was buying in Herne Hill last year. I'm now buying in borderline Corai or Bellpost Hill from a price point of view. Those people have been locked out. So the market is really patchy, and it will be patchy. 1 to 3 million's pretty good because those people are buying and selling homes. If you sell, you'll buy something, and vice versa. But the truth is, we've had 2 parts of a market that have just been totally destroyed. So I look at the volume and say, if we were selling 10 houses this time last year, or at the start of last year, we're now selling 5. So the challenge for us as a real estate business is to survive on less deals. Our strategy will be to put on more people and grow our sales team because people do deals, not the market. But it's just been a bizarre 3 years. If you look at that, good market. The market probably right now isn't any better or worse than 2019, but no one remembers what 2019 was like. So really, moving forward, I think it's going to be really checkered and patchy. I think there'll be more pain come on with supply demand getting out of whack. And I reckon there'll be people, I wouldn't mind betting that we go into a double dip on price. So we've already come off about 10% at its peak, and I reckon we'll go lower. And that will be because with more supply and less demand, there'll be a vendor that says, there's two types of vendors. One, I'd like to sell, and one, I have to sell.
Need to.
And right now, the market will favour those that have to sell. Those that say, I'm prepared to drop 50 grand to get sold because I can't make the payment 3 months from now.
And that sets a new price, doesn't it?
Correct. And that drives price. So again, I do remember micro and macroeconomics 101. But the truth is, you know, I'm not using any data to support this. This is what we're seeing at the coalface. This is what we sold last week, what we sold last month, what we're selling compared to last year. And we know that we have 20-25% market share of Geelong in nearly every suburb. So what we are seeing is buyers a lot more sophisticated. And look, the buyers are more sophisticated too. Like, I could feed them with data, but they already know the data. The data's everywhere. So the consumer, whether we're buying and selling, the consumer is so much more savvy with information. But the truth is, I think we're going to go into a very checkered 12, 18 months. And the thing I got wrong was I thought the pain might have arrived. It hasn't been as painful, but I think it's still coming. So without being alarmist, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we sail through and it's really good. But people are thinking, well, they're going to reduce interest rates next month or the month after. I don't think they would have done that on interest rates to then undo all their good work. Apparently it's good work. But I don't think they're going to release that pressure. They're going to extend it at least 3, 4, 6 months, probably make people adjust to what they wanted to adjust to.
It's unlikely the rates are going to come down rapidly. It'll be a very slow ease off.
Correct.
When it happens, and it probably will happen, but it'll be a very slow process.
And I guess the narrative is, want unemployment to go up. I mean, it's sad, but then it puts, you shine a light on your own business. Well, who are the people that we can't fit in? And like that's hard. That'll be the hardest thing as leaders in businesses, saying, I need to move people on. That's our last resort. We learned that lesson in COVID really early, where it wasn't panic stations, but it was you only had the information to deal with what you did, and we held everybody, and we've grown. We've actually put on more people this year than we ever have. But the truth is, if the environment's going to be what we get, then you still need to navigate the environment and you still need to adapt. And so I think unemployment will go up. Interest rates are on pause. I think at this price, it's a bit challenging. But the other side of it too is Geelong's got a lot. We're all advocates for Geelong, and Geelong, I think, survives better than a lot of other areas too. We've got the perfect combination between city and country and coast. We've just got an amazing place. Got a great footy club. We've got commerce. We've got industry coming down. We've got sporting clubs, coming out of area. Like it's such a great place and such a diverse place. We've got great schooling. I think Geelong's well placed to survive better. But in saying that, we're not immune to whatever challenges are coming.
Some of the impacts will flow, and there's negative. If they're negative impacts, they'll flow through, and we'll feel it. But to sort of reflect back when I arrived in Geelong, it was a tired industrial town, and I thought I'll come here for a couple of years and then get back to small country places. Well, that was a long time ago. 40 odd plus years ago, but I think the town has evolved beautifully, and it does. You just said it, like it provides fantastic education capabilities, right through from expensive private school to really, really good, government schools. It provides great. Deakin University, as good as any. You've got the range of education possibilities. We've got great service opportunities. It's a great tourist area, really good hospitality area. Like I think Geelong as a community where we can grow, have our kids grow and have job opportunities is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's been resilient. Like it's been resilient because you've got a really diverse community and a really diverse range of like very expensive properties from your perspective down to the really manageable first home properties that people can afford to get into. So if people can move through those layers of economic capability in the town that they live in and work in, not many of us need to leave here. No. And Melbourne's only 50 minutes up the road.
And the only thing is we're missing a fast rail. Like when that comes in, we're home and hosed. But
and a few more flights from Avalon.
Yeah. We're just so well placed. So again, it's that short-term, middle-term, long-term game. I think for anyone holding real estate, it's a really good piece to have as part of the puzzle. Yeah. And you guys obviously are in the other space. But, I think it's the whole balanced portfolio approach, but Geelong is really well placed for that. But, holding real estate as an investment at a higher interest rate with rents, and again, our industry, rents going up, well, it sort of forces rents to go up. I mean, if you're holding a property, I don't know, again, this narrative about landlords in Australia being greedy, we see the media drive this, and it's fundamentally wrong. Like a huge percentage of people that own investment properties aren't wealthy people. They're people that are on probably less than $100,000 a year. Yeah. They're doing that to build their wealth. It's not because they're wealthy and they just want to park their cash. A lot of people are taking pressure off the system to say, I want to fund my own retirement, for instance. I don't want to rely on the government. Yeah. I want to do it my way. I want to go self-managed. So it's a shame that we keep seeing this diatribe in our industry about greedy landlords putting up rent and stuff. I understand that there's rent pressure for people, but when the government says, well, we're going to keep taxing middle class and we're going to start making these people do all the heavy lifting, I mean, the interesting from a proposition point of view, and just spitballing here, but why couldn't you go and get the big banks that make $7 billion a year to actually fund some type of, why is it the people holding investment properties that have to do the heavy lifting in that space? There's plenty of other industries that are killing it that aren't paying a lot of tax, for instance, that you could go and tax to recreate that allocation in a different space. They shine the light on the greedy landlord, but a lot of these people are going to jump out of the space because the compliance they're made to do nowadays is almost off its head. We're going to increase, it's not going to give you land tax. We're already paying land tax. We're going to increase it. They keep talking about taking away negative gearing. I mean, that was an election thing, I think, last cycle where Labor they lost the election based on that sort of thing so I don't know, it's one of those spaces where there's not a lot of confidence in that part of the world. And if all these people start selling investment properties, that's the cornerstone of wealth. I mean, I get that people's super is long-term, but your property and your home is probably the most important asset you own, I would think. So I don't think we really want values to drop 10, 15, 20%, do we? It's going to create all sorts of pressure. So look, I don't think I've got the answers, but
you're just running for parliament.
No, the stuff that's coming out isn't necessarily ideal either. And I just think the next 6-12 months will be pretty interesting, to be honest.
Well, that's the relationship between what we do and what your industry is. For our clients that want to be looking at investment properties as part of their portfolio, wherever they happen to own them, in super or outside personally, or in a family trust, is making sure that we build in the long-term worst-case possibilities so that they shouldn't have to be forced sellers at any point. There's ways to manage through that no matter what happens with interest rates and market movements. And the worst thing you can find is that person who has to sell when the market shit itself. Yeah. That's catastrophic for their long-term financial well-being. So managing their cash flows and planning in advance about what might happen and what they're building in contingencies, because it's a key part of everyone's portfolio, diversification, and property is part of it.
Yeah. And the difficulty thing is people find out those, if someone in a street is prepared to sell at a much cheaper price, that price will get shown. I mean, people find it. Yeah. The information's out there. So the next 6 or 12 months, if there's those people that have been holding on for 12 months that are finding out my cash reserves are gone.
Too hard.
Yeah. All the money in COVID that we banked is now gone. We're finding that we're just getting called into property after property now with worst case price checking, but now listings. And whilst it's exciting ringing the bell in your office and saying I've got another listing, at a macro level, it's starting to worry because it's getting out of whack and this stock level is going to start building and it's going to supply a lot more people with a lot more choice, and that's going to impact price. And again, owners have had it good for a while. We've had a pretty good run, but I think the macro space is pretty interesting at the moment, and it's just a watch and see. And the challenge is we don't know the data till we see it. So you don't know what the bottom looks like until you look back and say that was the bottom. But at the moment, it might be a little bit of catching, falling knife stuff that you can't see the adjustments in front of you. I mean, you're trying to give vendors that feedback about how low do you need to go to sell. That's a conversation we haven't had for 20 years. My team hasn't had it for 20 years. In Geelong, we've had a upward cycle other than global crisis 2007 or 8 it was.
7, 8, 9.
3 months, but then they knee-jerked on interest rates. They just slashed and burned and then it recovered. I don't think we've seen a bad market. So the conversations are totally different. It's totally foreign. The last 12 months has been, I want to hold your price, but I don't know how much you need to adjust it. Do you need to adjust it every month? Are you waiting for that right buyer? It's a really hard space because you can't see the drop till you look back and say, well, that's what the data showed. And then you say, oh, it makes sense. Right now we're at the forefront of this new market, and which way it goes, we're not really sure.
That's not such a bad thing, though. I mean, the markets broadly, and property is just another example of an investment like a share, like a bond, whatever. Like if we have nothing but constant positive growth, that's unrealistic. It's not feasible. It's not possible because that's not how the economies work. It's not how markets work broadly. So having moments where it comes back a bit puts it back in perspective and say, well, yes, it's not a guaranteed rise, but if you buy the right time and buy the right thing and hold for long enough, you'll do okay. And too many people have probably thought this is a way to make a quick buck, get in, get out. And some of those might now find that if the market comes off, they've got to get out at the wrong time, at the wrong price. So,
and
learning from
and the thing about prices is totally subjective. I mean, the thing that people forget about real estate is I could put a can of Coke on the table and we'll all have a crack and we'll all be different. So try prices in a house. You know, people think that we're the experts on that, but there's just so much more to it. And that you could sell a home 52 weeks of the year and get a totally different number each time based on competition, based on someone that's emotionally attached, based on no one turning up to an auction and what does that price look like. So for us, it's quite a subjective space anyway, but you know, I think the ingredients around it are changing and it's, it might be the cycle that needs, I mean, we all justify cycles, that's part of the cycle, I suppose, but I just think there's a lot more harder conversations about to happen.
Challenging times.
Yeah, challenging, and that's okay.
But if it's not a challenge, it's not. That doesn't make it as much fun, does it?
That makes me feel better.
Let me take a little segue. Still on the Geelong community, I went to a breakfast a couple of weeks ago and I saw you auction nothing for $500, mate. We were talking just off air about sort of the philanthropic nature of the Geelong community and also tying this into government, how there really is a lack of support. I know you're very supportive of the Geelong community outside of what you do from a business point of view. I know PB very heavily involved with a couple of local charities. Maybe give a pump up to a couple of the charities and organisations that you support, and also your thoughts on how the Geelong community and business owners like us can actually do a better job of supporting the Geelong region.
It's actually pretty inspiring. Like speaking to you before, Jay, but you were talking about PB and what he's involved in. But I think when you start a business and you're younger, you're probably a bit insulated to how things affect you in the world. So now as a parent, 46, middle age, you know, probably, I don't know if I'm closer to the end than the start. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. Halfway. You know, you start to take notice more of things that affect you. I mean, when you start your process, I want to earn an income, I want to buy a better car, I want to buy a home. You start then going through that journey of ownership and it's about everybody else all of a sudden. You know, the laptop was on the microwave for 2 years because it was more important than someone else had a desk. That type of leadership, growth. And then you get to a point where, I don't know if you get angry. I don't know. It's amazing. So we spoke about those charities. I did 2 auctions for 2 charities in the last 3 months. One was Hope Bereavement, fantastic charity, local, picking up the pieces with families that are affected by death or suicide, you know, providing resources for people in that space. And the other one was Read the Play with Michelle Gertz, who's a good friend of ours. You know, Michelle's running a charity, great board, great local people. She's the only employee. I think there's a half as well. And, you know, Michelle got up and thanked everybody, 300 people at a room, 6 o'clock in the morning doing a breakfast. I think they raised $19,000 and there's a tear in the eye. And the thing that infuriates me is the amount of wastage in our system, our state. It just absolutely pisses me off. The amount of money that's been thrown at things, that poor budgeting, poor outcomes, poor, you know, and so what they do is, and it's the problem with the socialist state when you run out of spending everybody else's money. We're now in the space now where they're going to keep taxing people higher to contribute to a shit show in Melbourne that can't run our state properly. And you see these local charities that are doing great things on shoestring budgets, and there'd be hundreds of them. Like, I don't want to pick these 2 out and neglect the other 500 that are out there just trying to live off shoestring budgets and trying to impact and help people. It's just sad. It's sad. And you know, part of that, you get angry because people are working their ass off to make an impact in their community with things that are important. Those 2 charities I mentioned don't get any government funding. They live in the cracks. And I'm not saying that anybody's cause is any more or any less important. Like, there's lots of amazing people doing amazing things, but I just look at that level and just think about how much money is being raised at government level that just doesn't filter into those smaller places. And we hear stories of things that are off budget, hundreds of millions of dollars, and this was supposed to cost $1 billion. Like, if you ran your business like that, you'd be broke. Like, truthfully. If it was your money, would you spend that money if it was yours, the way you'd spend everybody else's. And I don't know, here's my little rant, but it's just so disappointing. And it's not about any particular, like, I don't know, the last election, they won in a landslide. Labor won in a landslide. Was there anything else to vote for? I don't know. Like, people need to stand up. I don't think politics has ever been worse, personally.
It's difficult. Come back to the charity stuff, mate, though. I think we shouldn't feel like we're neglecting a whole heap of the 500 out there because we're focusing on 6 or 8 or 10 or a couple. Because I think each one of us, all of us think, well, if I can help 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, then those 5 or 10 are going to be better because I'm contributing something to them. And if all of us out there have that intent, then across the whole community, all 500 will get support in some way. And, if you spread yourself too thin, you can't make a difference. Yeah. But if you find a handful that you can actually make a difference for, they will be more sustainable than the revenue that others can, philanthropic revenue can be tipped into the others because we find a way to make those handful that we support much more viable. And, like it's the kid walking along, the bloke walking along the beach seeing the kid throwing rocks. The kid gets there and the kid's throwing starfish back into the ocean. And the bloke says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm saving the starfish." He said, "There's hundreds and hundreds of them. You can't save all of them." The kid picks one up and throws it in, but I saved that one. Yeah. And if we all make a difference with 1 or 2 things, and all of us have that same intent cumulatively, we're going to have a really good outcome. So don't denigrate the fact that you support a few and you leave others out because we can't do it all.
Oh, look, and again, there's just hundreds and hundreds. And look, that conversation I'd put in everybody's bucket that, there's people out there doing work. You sort of look back at your own journey and think, I'm in a selfish industry and the most important person is you. And then the evolution of yourself is a little bit, now you can give a bit back because you're sorted. And I think that's the evolution of any business, any individual, any person. I mean, we got people doing tint rattling in Buxton, like, you're just so proud when you see that. It's whether it's Dry July or whether it's breast cancer. We did a $70,000 for breast cancer at our wards. Like, for us as a brand, the Crown Casino part was nice than the Palladium, but the truth was the 75 for breast cancer was far more important than who got the awards. So for us, it's trying to find the right balance. And as an industry, as a real estate industry, I think there's a lot of generous companies out there. Like, lots of people do lots of stuff, but as an industry, it's quite a selfish industry. It's salesy. It's catch and kill. It's at the pointy end of it. It's auctions on Saturday. It's a high pressure space. But the more as an industry we can do around community values, building bridges, schools, all that sort of stuff. It's
a great way to raise your credibility too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Actually seen to be putting back into the community rather than just taking from. And
absolutely.
Our philosophy has been this community, the Geelong community, is what's allowed us to build and grow a reasonably successful little business. Well, if you're not giving back to it, if you're not contributing back to it, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, I agree.
So it's a key part of it.
100%. And that's again, our evolution as a brand is people will work out that we sell lots of houses. Like, you don't need to keep reminding people of that. You don't need to remind the underbidder that they just paid $110,000 over reserve. And if you did a good job, the owner will tell you that. But the truth is, can we far more effective as a brand promoting local businesses, putting money into grassroots stuff, collaborating to get better outcomes for our community? And that's our customer. Those people are our customers. So there is a selfish component to it that, look, if we help you, at some point you might do business with us. Like, let's call a spade, but it's not the driver of it. Again, if you do enough stuff and you help enough people,
incidentally,
good things happen.
It flows back as benefits.
Of course it does.
Yeah. It's the intent.
So, to the politicians out there, just pick it up.
Stop wasting money.
Pick it up. But it's the amount of wastage in any type. I mean, I've always said this to friends of mine, local council. There should be a rule that says if you want to contribute at local council, you can't go into any type of politics within 5 years, for instance. And we'll soon find out the people that actually want to help and actually just want to use it as a platform for their own stuff. And I'm not saying everybody who's in politics is selfish, by the way. Like, there's probably some fantastic people in that space, but we just got to do better. The amount of money that's being spent on rubbish and shit would be frightening. And yet you got charities, bumming around for 20 grand trying to do a breakfast at 6 o'clock in the morning and selling socks. Yeah. Which is noble, but they just need help. And, so very much community related. I think, as I said, you get into your 40s and it's a little bit of, there's got to be more to it than just what we do daily. There just has to be more around that. And again, it's the evolution. I think we'll look back in 10, 20 years, and if you made an impact and you helped somebody and, you did good things and you were kind to people, and then you've probably lived a pretty good life, I would have thought.
It's not too bad. And as a dad, growing into being a dad, and then eventually having grown kids from the kids that you were the dad of, you want them to come into a world that's actually a reasonable place to live. So we have to make an impact. We have to make an effort to have.
People talk about leadership, Pete. When you've got a 12-year-old daughter, that's what real leadership is.
She's leading you.
She's leading the family unit beautifully at the moment. So, you learn to see what real leadership looks like.
Now, knew we wouldn't have much trouble talking this morning. We're just ticked over an hour. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Cindy, last time we had a podcast, you sat quietly there and we thought you might have a question. Cindy's our podcast producer, Cindy Higgins.
Hello.
Did I get that right, Cindy?
Yes.
Yep. Now, how old are you, Cindy?
I'm 19.
Okay, so
my goodness.
as a 19-year-old, I know last week you said you would have liked to ask a question. Here's your chance to ask Ben a question, if you've got one, around property or anything you like.
No, I found it really interesting, the journey that you said that you had when you were my age, because I'm doing a commerce degree also, and I sat
Not sure why.
Yeah, well, I sat in my interview with Jay before I started here, and he was like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "I'm kind of where you're at, just trying to get your foot in the door somewhere and just see where your passion lies and see where it goes, where it can lead you, how you're going to get there." Same sort of, it was just really interesting to see that your mindset then is very similar to my mindset now. And I was just very intrigued because it's different era, different times that we're going through the same sort of thing. So it's interesting that hasn't changed much.
I think the reminder for me was that just don't beat up on yourself if you don't really know what you want to do with your life.
Spot on.
Who's minding the scoreboard? And I guess there was always pressure. I remember having an interview in year 10 in my high school. What do you want to do with your life? I'm 15. I want to be. I think at 15, I still thought there was only 3 jobs: a fireman, policeman, or an ambulance driver. But the truth is, there's that pressure on what do you want to do with your life. And as I said, I spent a lot of time in my current industry not wanting to do what I'm doing. It was a shift internally around accepting the platform and what you could do with the platform and understanding where you want to be. I mean, if you don't have a why, life's really hard. But it's okay not to have that yet. Why do you do the things you do?
It's okay for it to change as well.
Absolutely it does. It becomes more developed, the plan. It's not just about one thing. It becomes about 5 things and you're trying to juggle everything. Like you said, when you're a parent, there's other things that need to be decided. So, commerce for me was just a reason to get mum off my back, to be honest. The truth is, you may not know your why until things happen. Sometimes out of trauma. I mean, sometimes I'm lucky, I had an experience that we won't go into. The truth is it developed a hardness to me and it, we spoke about risk. For me, doing what I did, there was no risk. I was just absolute adamant I could do what we've done. There was no – people say, is this what you thought you were going to do when you started 14 years ago? Absolutely. This is the plan. This is what we're doing. And there wasn't anything that could stop me, but that was shit sandwich wrapped as a gift, to be honest, because basketball, I probably just didn't have the internal fortitude. I didn't have that drive to say I'm going to make it regardless. It wasn't an excuse. It was just that I hadn't developed it. And, I watched the Steph Curry doco last night, about a kid that's, every college overlooked him. He was tiny, he was small, and it's just a great story. And it's not focused on what he's doing now. It was focused on his journey around just being knocked back. And so as a 19-year-old, it's okay. It's okay to experience different things. In fact, you'll have a lot more jobs by the time you're 25 than probably what we would have had.
Spot on.
And that's okay too, because you won't know what you know until you learn it and know it, and you'll make mistakes, and that's cool. But just put in whatever you're doing at the time, put in and do the best you can, and out of it comes things. So, my question to you as a 19-year-old is, do you ever think you'll own a home? Is that an agenda item as a 19-year-old?
Yes. It's really hard, honestly, because most people my age and all my friends at the moment are kind of in this situation where we're looking at what's happening. We're looking at the market. We're looking at all of our friends struggling to find a rental property, freaking out about prices. They can't even save a cent in their bank account. They're just going along saving as much as they can, which is barely anything, and going, how are we going to do it? How are we going to get there? And I'm lucky that I have parents that own property at the moment. Even though they can't give me a leg up now, maybe in the future down the track, future events.
Yep.
Like I'll have property, like me and my sister will have something in the future, but it's kind of unknown. Like it's a hope and it's a wish. And I knowing me, I reckon I'll be able to do it because
Because you want to.
I want to, and I have a person that has the drive to kind of get there. But a lot of people, especially my age, it's a worry.
Yeah,
definitely.
and a lot of people have given up on that dream. Like that's the hard thing. The Australian dream was own your own home, work hard, do well. That unfortunately is not the same. It wasn't the same thing that we were brought up with. It's a different conversation. It's how do I survive $16 pints at a pub? Like it's hard. It's different. It's a different space, and your generation will learn to leverage. Okay, well, I need to leverage mum and dad here. The bank of mum and dad, can they guarantor? But there's rorts. There's mortgage insurance for the biggest rort going around. Like, what are we going to wake up to the fact that home buyers are paying the bank's insurance?
Protect the bank.
like there's just stuff. Get me on the payroll tax. Like people that want to work hard, build a business are getting taxed because they employ people. Like there's certain things that just shouldn't happen. They're just wrong, fundamentally wrong. But the thing I worry about is the Australian dream that I was brought up with, that, you got a shot. You got a shot at this. If you work hard, you do the right things, and the hard thing is people who are 18, 19, 20 will want to do the right things. They want to work hard, but there's just massive barriers, and it's a shame.
It's demotivating for a lot of people my age. They're just kind of already at the point where it's like the news is just sad. It's just constant. Like you don't see anything good in the news these days. Most people just turn it off. Social media is a bit of a shit show as well. Like everything that is kind of getting shoved down our throats is just bad news day after day. So
Negative
it's
energy.
It's not great. So we're waiting for, I feel like maybe in like that 6 to 12 months, hopefully something will come around and like things will start to change a bit and look up in all those sort of industries, real estate and everything, and kind of give us a bit of a glimmer of hope.
This is going back to one of Ben's points around the things that you actually can control. And one of the principles that has not changed is the fact that with discipline in whatever you do, it creates freedom for you to do the things that you want to do. And the idea of always, hope's not a great strategy. No. And that idea of, and I think back to sort of today's kids and the focus around mental health and risk of paying attention to the news is that we live in an unknown and hopeful future. And to me, the future is where anxiety exists, and the past is where depression exists, and the place that we actually unfortunately fail to spend the most time is the things that we can control, which is right now. And it's kind of what Ben had touched on in relation to, like, if you can have the discipline to take action as a 19-year-old, and what can I control? I can actually control how I manage my cash flow. I can actually go and get some support and advice. I can listen and talk to people like Ben and to Peter. I can start to gain knowledge and understanding of what I can influence in my world. They're the people who actually be the successors of your generation. The people that maybe are waiting for a change will be the people, I think, in 5-10 years' time, because I grew up with them that took no action.
Still waiting.
They talked about potentially going into business and they did nothing, didn't take the risk, the calculated risk of actually moving and taking action and taking incremental action, because it's not always the massive change. Sometimes it's just about iterative change. It's about making small iterative steps in the right direction. And I think, again, having the discipline and the willingness to do the hard work. When you get out of bed in the morning and the stuff you need to do and you don't really want to do it, that's when it's got to be.
The biggest takeaway for us is that the best performers in our industry, and probably most industry, are the ones that actually get it done. They don't find excuses. There's two concepts. One is, what's the risk if you don't do it? So when you talk about that calculated risk, when am I going to do it? When am I going to take that new job? When am I going to invest in that course, or when am I going to start a business? The risk is, what if you don't do it? What does your life look like? And what do you look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years if you don't take that risk? And the second thing is, what price are you prepared to pay? And I know it's a really old concept. And again, we go into that space where it's quite grey around mental health and stuff. But the truth is, the 1% that live a life by design pay a price. And it could be about anything. It could be about how much time you spend at work, how much time you spend away from your kids, whether you see your family. And that's everybody's individual choice. But you don't get to 1% land if you're not prepared to pay a price at some point. again, there's probably people that look back and say I'm the most wealthiest person in the world, but I don't have a relationship with my kids. That's the price you pay. Find me someone who hasn't paid any type of price, and you'll probably find me a liar. And so it's that calculated stuff, and it's trying to work out what's important, and things change. We spoke about that journey of other priorities and stuff and trying to fit them in, but the truth is you have to pay a price. Nothing happens by itself, and nothing's going to fall in your lap, and hope's not a strategy.
Very few of us win Tats Lotto and suddenly have enough to buy a house in our own right.
Especially if you don't buy a ticket.
Spot on, exactly. But, I mean, there's plenty of examples. I was chatting recently with family, people, friends, and the young person who's earning really good income but has to have 3 overseas trips a year and then wonders why they haven't got enough to pay a deposit on a house. They want to be a homeowner too.
Pretty sure
that's where you pay the price. They'll say, well, okay, let's only have 2 trips and put a bit aside. And if I plan for 10 years, when I'm 35, I'll have more than enough to put, if I have 1 trip and put it aside, and when I'm 30, I'll have more than enough. So if you have a plan and you put a bit aside on a regular basis, and that's one of the beautiful things with our clients that we've had for a long time, they come in as just working class people and think, we'll never have enough to retire and buy the caravan and the car to pull it and have enough to feed ourselves in retirement. But over a 10, 12, 15-year period, 20-year period if you start earlier, it can happen.
Yeah.
Having enough for a deposit on a home can happen, even if the homes are much more expensive and life is expensive to live if you put a bit aside. And that's the challenge, having a plan.
And remember that it's very easy to grow into an income. It's very hard to grow out of expenses.
Mm-hmm.
As your income grows, you have a tendency to want to eat a little bit better, drive a little bit better car. If you can manage that differential between your income and your expenses, you will be in a position to be able to put money aside to save and to hopefully have that home.
Also, though, you should never sacrifice enjoying today while today's there, because you have a plan that's 10 or 12 years out and you fail to live and enjoy the days now because you're putting everything aside and you're not having a lifestyle at all. Yeah. There's got to be a balance between that, because if you don't enjoy today, that 10-year period is going to be shit house.
I ran into that lesson a bit last year. I was doing uni, working constantly, barely spending any money, would say no to literally nearly every time my friends asked me to go out to dinner.
That's not
and
healthy.
It just ran myself into a hole.
Yeah.
And this year already has been so much better because I've learned how to balance that. I'm still growing my savings, still doing all that work, still achieving, still taking risks, but I'm still nurturing that.
Having a smile as well.
Other side, that social side. Because if you don't have that sort of thing, that's what keeps you going. That's really what keeps that motivation to push further in those other areas is those enjoyments in life. And if you're not nurturing that as well, everything else is kind of redundant.
Yeah. And I think as a younger person, just quickly, the challenge you've got is not to live up to everyone else's expectations. Like what you see on social, I don't spend any time on social media, but I know my kids will, and they do, and they're on TikTok and they're on stuff. And the challenge is that you've got your own path to tread, and you're not driven by everybody else's expectations and keeping up with what everything looks like on social media, because the reality is most of it's probably bullshit.
Yeah, it's other people's highlight reel.
Correct. And, I was always told everyone's got their own shit to deal with. So you've just got to tread your own path and live your own life and do what makes you happy. And home ownership, it should be, I think, from a wealth point of view, sought after. It gives you great security, gives you great satisfaction. But at the end of the day, it's getting harder. But that's the challenge of the 19-year-old who's doing half a uni degree and wondering what you want to do with the rest of your life. It's part of the puzzle.
It might just take a little bit longer to get there, but you'll still get there.
Ben, any closing thoughts, any call to action to any of our listeners out there before we wrap this up?
Oh, look, I don't think so. As I said, I'll sit here with imposter. There's lots of people out there having a go, and I don't know. I think the best thing I ever did was do it. People talk about it. People think about it. People wonder about what a life could look like by design. I'm the most far from perfect person you'll ever meet in your life, but the truth is I had a plan and I'm trying to live my best life. As I said, we make mistakes all the time. It comes back to the intent of trying to help people, and for me, it's been a fantastic journey, but it's just if you're sitting at home and you're wondering what your next 20 years looks like, well, have a think about what you think you'd like and then, put a plan around it, because, again, performance isn't about doing it any better. It's actually often just in the doing, just being there, being ready for a deal, being out there, putting yourself out there, doing all those sort of things. So look, it's probably a bit of a long-winded. I reckon we'll edit this just quietly.
That's beautiful,
But
mate.
no, look, as I said, I don't pretend to know any more than anyone else. But I think the difference in people is their willingness to actually get their hands dirty and have a crack. And like you said, there's different forms of risk, but unless you put yourself out there, you're not going to go anywhere anyway. So,
Well, mate, you put yourself out there with Buxton a number of years ago. For those people who want to get a hold of you at Buxton, how can people find you on the interwebs?
you won't find me on social, but actually I'm on LinkedIn. But look, you'll see one of the Buxton offices across Geelong, and just ask for me, and if I can point you in the right direction, I will, of course.
And website, mate, you on?
We're on
Buxton?
buxton.com.au, so all our information's on there, and
Instagram, Facebook, all those.
Yeah, nah. Actually, we've got the Buxton brand's on there. We've got a Geelong page, which is good. So I don't spend a lot of time on it, unfortunately, but I understand the need to be on there as a business. So that's probably my self-awareness.
Well, this podcast will go up there, mate, and it's going to blow up the internet. So,
I'm not really sure.
Ben, thanks for joining us, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I know Cindy has, PB has, and we look forward to maybe a round 2 or 3 in the near future.
Good on you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and thanks for your friendship, Ben.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.